in an environment where it's essentially a federal responsibility but touches provincial jurisdictions as well is done?
Well, I mean, I think we've seen over the past number of years that attacks on our democratic institutions, attacks on our democracies do not limit themselves simply to federal electoral events or federal parties. Provincial parties, municipal elections even, have had have proven to be targets of note for foreign interference as well. So part of what we wanted to do within Bill C-70 was explicitly make it possible for CSIS to grant appropriate security clearances to provincial premiers so that they can actually have a better lens on protecting their institutions and also their citizens, in addition to the work that the federal government does to protect their citizens.
Okay. And jurisdictionally, as you mentioned, foreign interference can touch not only subnational governments, but areas that fall within provincial jurisdiction. And how can that be?
Okay, so picture this. You're gearing up for a local election, right? Maybe you're even thinking about throwing your own hat in the ring, and suddenly, bam, it hits you. The whole system might be more open to outside interference than you realized.
Yeah, that's a daunting thought.
Talk about a wake-up call, right? That's exactly where we're diving in today, how Canada's tackling this whole challenge of keeping democracy safe, not just on the national level, but all the way down to your local ballot box.
Absolutely. It's about protecting every vote.
We're zeroing in on Bill C-70. And before you tune out thinking, ugh, legal jargon, trust me, this is something that affects all of us. It's about how Canada aims to protect the integrity of its elections. And the part that I find particularly interesting is how this bill recognizes that threats to democracy aren't just a federal concern.
Right. For a long time, we've seen election security as primarily a national issue. This source material really highlights a shift in thinking it's becoming less about distinct levels and more about the bigger picture.
Okay, so let's break this down. The source material uses this phrase, attacks on our democracies do not limit themselves simply to federal electoral events, which honestly is a little unnerving to think about. Have we actually seen this happen? Have there been attacks on provincial or even local elections?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not just a theoretical concern. We've got real-world examples. In a recent municipal election, there were these targeted misinformation campaigns spreading false information about polling station locations, specifically in certain neighborhoods.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine showing up ready to vote and you're at the wrong place?
Yeah.
It's creating confusion and distrust. And then in another instance, a provincial party, their entire voter database was hacked.
No way.
Suspected to be the work of a foreign entity. These aren't isolated incidents either. They're happening more and more, and it underscores why this Bill C-70 is so important. These threats are real.
It's a good reminder that it's not just about those big federal elections, those smaller elections that hit closer to home. They matter just as much.
Every vote counts, right?
Exactly, which I guess is the whole point of this bill. But here's where things get a bit more complex. The source material mentions provincial jurisdictions.
Yeah, that's where the lines can get a bit blurry.
This is where it feels like we're wading into murky waters, right?
A little. It's like, think about trying to organize a neighborhood watch program.
Yeah.
Everyone agrees it's a good idea in theory.
Right, safer streets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then you get into who's responsible for what? Who has the authority to do what? How do we share information without overstepping boundaries? It gets complicated. And that's essentially the challenge with this jurisdictional overlap. You've got different levels of government, each with their own roles and responsibilities, trying to address a problem that doesn't fit neatly into any one box.
And to be clear, this isn't some abstract political theory we're talking about. This is about me, you, and every voter.
Yeah.
It's about making sure that your vote, whether it's for the prime minister or your local school board, is protected.
Absolutely. Your vote is your voice.
And this is where Bill C-70 takes an interesting turn. It proposes giving certain provincial authorities security clearances.
Giving them more access.
Hold on, security clearances. You're saying someone at the provincial level might have access to the same level of intelligence as, say, a federal agent? That's a big deal. What's the reasoning there?
It's about giving provinces a clearer picture of potential threats. Think of it like this. We're equipping local communities with the information and tools they need to recognize and address issues before they escalate. It's about being proactive rather than reactive. It's like having a neighborhood watch that's not just responding to break-ins, but actively identifying potential risks and working to prevent them.
That makes a lot of sense, especially considering those real-world examples you mentioned. But it does raise another crucial question. How do we make sure all of this information is used responsibly? If we're talking about sharing potentially sensitive data more freely, how do we balance security with transparency and accountability?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Like walking a tightrope.
It is. It's an ongoing challenge. Finding that sweet spot between effective security measures and maintaining transparency so that citizens can hold their governments accountable. That's crucial. It's a conversation that's not going away anytime soon, that's for sure.
This deep dive has really highlighted that protecting democracy isn't a one-man show anymore. It's a team effort, and everyone has a role to play, from the federal level right down to local communities.
It really makes you think. As technology keeps advancing and those lines between local and global issues get blurrier, what new challenges are we going to face in safeguarding our democratic processes? What does this mean for you when you go to cast your vote? These are questions we all need to consider, especially as citizens, in a world that's constantly changing.
Food for thought, for sure.
Absolutely.
It's a team effort, and we all have a stake in this.
That's it.
Thanks for diving into this with me today.
It's been a pleasure.